In this video, I'm going to show you how to make Neuro drum and bass like NOISIA. So NOISIA are known for their crazy heavy drum and bass. They're absolute legends in the scene, and they're known for their heavy drums and their incredible, pretty much perfect sound design. Now the track that we're going to be looking at today is one called Duh Stup. And they made this track with the upbeats. It's a collab. So let's get into it. Today is a huge day. The Neuro DnB sample pack is out now. Link down below to grab it. It's got this project template in, as well as 8 others, over 550 samples, and 115 Serum 2 presets, as well as lots of other little bonuses inside. For more info, go to the website. There's a preview of everything in the pack as well. So what we've got on here is a little build up and a drop. And what I'm going to show you is the drums on the drop for the first 8 bars, because then they're just duplicated. And then I'll show you these crazy basses, and then I'll show you some of the vocal effects we've got in the drop as well. So let's start by recreating the drums. So we'll delete the first 8 bars and recreate it. So let's zoom into the first bar, and this is what we're going to start with. So let's go to step mode. And if you want this project template to follow along with, there's a free download to this. I'll leave that down below. So let's start with Neuro Kick 3. And all we've done is turn this out up a little bit just to make it a little bit snappier. And then we're going to put it on the first beat and halfway across the third beat. Now we're going to use Neuro Snare 3. And then we're just going to put this in one of the snare slots in the second beat and the fourth beat. Now we want hat 6, and we're going to put this in one of the hat slots, and we're just going to pop this every single beat. So pop it here, and then I can just press Control B. I've learned this shortcut now. I'm not going to forget it. There we go. Now we want to put the ride that we've got in, and we want to put this every single other step, like this, just to give it that extra groove. Now let's duplicate this first drop. So highlight everything, Control B, and now let's grab Neuro Clap 1, and we've turned it out on it quite a lot because we're going to use this as a groove tool, and we're going to put it just here. And it adds groove just before the last snare. Now what we can do is zoom out a bit more. So you see we've just done the first 2 bars. We can literally just duplicate this again. So we can do this, press Control B, and then we can do that again and remove the clap here because we only want it on the first section and the third section. And then for this last section, we're going to have a change up in the basses, which you'll see later on. So we're going to put a break sample there. So we're going to keep these hats because it adds groove, and just do Control B. And then let's grab this break sample. So this break sample is from a free jungle pack. I'll leave a link to that down below. It's just got loads of break samples in it, and it sounds like this. I just feel like it connects it nicely having the hats there as well. So it seems like a seamless transition. And then you just duplicate this again, Control B, and it would create that next section there. Now we've got the first 32 bars of the drums complete. Now let's look at the basses. So the first thing you'll see here is the melody we're using. So we're using G as the root note. So I've just said G minor. And then this is the main bass melody. And then this is the transition melody here. So we've got a main bass, a sub bass, a support bass, and then a transition bass. So I'll show you first how I made the main bass with the sub bass. And this is pretty much just duplicated throughout. So I'll just zoom in on the first part of the melody so you can see it. And this is what it sounds like. So let's start with bass number 1. So this first bass is in the sample pack. It's called Dust. Now let's recreate it. So let's go to full screen mode for this. So the first thing we're going to do is turn the sub on, -2. And then we're going to just use a sub bass. Now we're going to go to oscillator A, go to digital, and find the one that says FM_freak, -2 for this. Turn the rand off and change the wavetable to 77. You can also do it here now, so you could turn it on here. Next, we're going to turn this level down a little bit to like 56-ish. So currently we've just got a fat sub bass basically. Now let's go to LFO 1, and we're going to put this on retrig here, 1/8 mode, and then create this shape here. And then we're going to whack this on the level here. So it's only affecting above 56%. So we're creating that wobble shape while still having a lot of sub underneath. So now we're going to go to the noise and we're going to change this to the first one, alpha NZ. And this is where a lot of the sound is going to come through. Now what we can do to make it sound a bit less robotic is to put the LFO rate on a new LFO, so LFO2, and then create like a unique shape. So we'll put it on 1.8 again, apply LFO2 to the level on like 60-ish%, and then we'll just change the shape of this to slightly different to the other one. Something like this. So now it's not just matching that. Now let's put a filter through it to get some new tones. So let's turn this filter on, turn the sub A, and then we're going to come here and select MISC and go for the reverb one. Turn this down to about 119, 18. And we're just going to leave it like this. Finally, let's go to the effects tab and let's apply some distortion. Let's put this on Signfold because this gets some really crazy sounds, and drop this right down to like 7%. It's already starting to create some madness. Now let's turn on the compressor. Let's go to multiband and let's change some of the settings here. Let's turn this up to about 0.7. This just makes it sound fatter. Let's turn the lows up a bit, make it sound fatter, the highs up a bit. And then we're just going to push this like crazy. So we're literally going to go boom, boom, boom. And now we're starting to get some crazy sounds coming through. And then finally, you know how I mentioned earlier, we're adding these LFOs in different places to get some unique, less robotic sounds. Let's come here to the EQ and let's apply LFO3 to this gain here. If it does that, shift or click just to get it to go one way. And then let's turn this right down so it doesn't kill our ears and make us deaf. And then let's put this on 1.8 mode again. And let's just create another shape. So maybe something like this. And then it just makes the sound come through a bit more. So now we have this filthy, neuro-y style sound that you can use on your track. Sounds absolutely disgusting. So now let's come back down here. Let's apply this to channel 21. Now we have this sound. So what's going on here? We're just EQing out the low end because we're going to put that sub underneath. We've just put a Pro MB on it on these settings, which just boosts some of the frequencies some more. And then we've just increased the volume with a Pro L just to make it as filthy as possible. So that's just a limiter. And it's also going into bass 7, which has got a Saturn tuner on fast ohmmeter setting and another EQ because it's just affecting the very highs here. This was just to add like an extra layer to it. And then also we've got some reverb on it here. This is just a reverb 2 with an EQ cutting out the lows because we don't want any reverb in the low end. And altogether we get that, and that all gets filtered into the bass bus, which is just turned down 2 decibels. And this has the Kickstart 2 on it, so I'm using the Kickstart 2 project template, which is just the sidechain. So let's look at this with the drums on the mixdown. So you can see these drums are coming in pretty loud. Not as loud as the basses, but then when we come to the drum bus here, you'll see we've got a Pro L on it, boosting the drums, and we've turned the basses down. So the drums are actually louder than the bass, which you always want. So now if we just look at the sub bass, you can see that it's got the same sort of LFO on it, creating a little wobble. And then it's -2 here. The LFO is applied to the level, and I've literally just drawn on the bins. So everything's been taken off, and then there's a bin 1 on 67%, a bin 3 on 33%, and a bin 5 on 4%. And that creates that little dent in the sine wave to give it some extra frequencies, make it sound a bit fatter. And then this has the same melody and it just creates this. So now let's look at the supporting bass here. Now this supporting bass here that comes in and then repeats like every other bar is also from the sample pack. It's one of the Neuro support basses and it looks like this. So if you want to recreate it, it's using some of the Serum 2 wavetables. And it just looks like this, pretty simple bass with some interesting post-processing on it. And this just goes at the end of each section. You might be wondering, why is it not going here? And we'll get onto that in a minute because that's where the vocals come in. It changes up. But let's first do this last bass, which complements the breaks. So this is bass 3 here, which sounds like this. So let's look at bass number 3, Neuro Stab Punch. and then let's recreate it. So -2, then analog BD sine, and we'll just turn the level off for now, and then oscillator B, we'll get digital dis to C, -2, and we'll turn the level off this as well. Now we want to create an LFO because this is going to be the shape, and we want it to look something like this here. Put it on envelope mode because it's a stab base, and then we'll start applying stuff to this in a minute. So let's just turn this to 29, and then let's turn on here some RM from B, and then let's start applying stuff. So let's first apply it to the level on 67%. Let's turn this on the level here. Let's turn this on the wavetable level on 36%. Let's turn this on the level here on 68%. And you see we're starting to get that sound coming through. But of course we need to boost it up with some effects. So distortion, stomp box, turn the drive off, apply the LFO to it, just turn it down a little bit. Let's get a filter on it, go to MISC, and then let's do band reject. So this is just essentially cutting out at 300 Hertz-ish, turn the width up a bit so it's not too aggressive. And then we can apply the LFO to the drive just to make it a bit fatter. Then of course we want a compressor, multiband, turn this up. We can make it sound a bit fatter with these. And then we can add some further bits and bobs to make it even fatter. Maybe some hyperdimension as well, just on a tiny bit. Something like that. And there you go, we've got this sound. Now I don't know why I haven't put the sub bass underneath this. I guess I just didn't feel like it needed it, because we have got a sub bass on it. If you want to EQ out the low end and add a sub bass, you can. So earlier I mentioned there were little gaps where I hadn't got that support bass in. You can literally see it on here. There's a gap here, and there's a gap here, and there's a gap there. And that's because if we scroll down, you'll see that there's a vocal in the corresponding slots. So here, here, and here. And what these are just like fighting grunt sounds. I think I found them either just online by Googling them or on Splice. And this is like a whoosh sound with the pitch turned down. And then that's just like the vocal at the end of the section. So let's just listen to it, and then you can add these kind of sounds in yourself. It just makes it sound a bit more interesting rather than just having basses throughout. It switches it up a little bit, adds some nice variation. And I think that sounds really cool and adds quite a lot to it. So on top of that, I'll just quickly go over the build up. You see it's just a lot of what we've already done, just some risers, little beep sound I found on Splice, and then just some like build up drums. So we've got these cool toms in the Neuro pack that I created a little build up with. And then some more build up samples that I found on Splice. And then this whoosh sound mixed with this vocal that I also found on Splice. I don't think this vocal is on Splice anymore. It's like a movie sound. So you just got to look for like movie stuff on like YouTube and add that in. And then the beeping sound and this. So let's listen to the final track. If you enjoyed this video here, why not watch this video here where I mix down an entire drum and bass track from scratch, so you can see how I mix down tracks like this with ease.